This video is about the setup of a Git user quote-unquote account. There's actually no such thing as a Git user account. All it is a .git config file. That's all it is. And that defines some stuff. And that is more important than the theoretical idea of a Git user account. By watching this video, you will have a good idea of what a Git user account is. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Okay, the .git config file in a user's home directory. This is what pretty much this is all about. Okay, so for all practical purposes, setting up the Unix user's .git config file is what we are talking about when we say we are configuring a Git user on the machine. The command that you use whenever editing that git config file is git config global and then specifying a setting. You are not going to want to edit the git config file directly. Thus, you need to use the command I just showed you. So what is a Git user? A Git user is simply the username and email found in a Unix user's home directory's .git config file. Those get stamped on any commit that this user makes while logged into that Unix machine as that user. Okay, so when you see the -- global in that command, let me show you the command again. Okay, there's the command. Git config -- global. Okay, so what does -- global refer to? Does it refer to the setting as being system-wide on the machine? No, it simply refers to the settings being global to all projects in this user's Unix user account. Again, it all comes back to one thing. All we're doing is changing or editing the .git config file in the user's home directory. That's what all of this Git user configuration is about, okay? Here are some useful commands that you should know. There's no need for me to go through them. Just pause the movie and look them over. If you don't understand what they mean just by looking at them, go and Google them. They're pretty straightforward. These are notes for myself. I installed Git on my Liquid Web machine, and that's its domain name. That's its name on the internet. The next thing, I set my username and email the same everywhere for Git. Whenever I use Git, no matter where it is, whether it's on my Mac, logged in, or whether it's on the virtual machine on my Mac, or whether it's in an account on my production server, I always use the same name and email when configuring the .git config file over in those places. Okay, next point. My Mac has the most sophisticated .git config file of them all because that's where I'm really going to be doing my development. And actually by proxy or whatever you want to call it, the changes I make are going to carry over to the virtual machine because there's a folder that's shared between the both of them, okay? But for all practical purposes, I'm going to be working on my Mac to do development. That's the operating system where Git is going to be in effect for my development. And finally, I'm just going to show you my .git config file. Here it is. There's my name. There's my email. Now, because I am using GitHub, I ended up having to set up this line here. This line over here is also important because it defines the global ignore file. Now, each project can have its own ignore file, but this is the global one for all the projects when I'm logged into my Mac. The editor is Nano. I don't know what those are. I think those got set up when I installed the GitHub app for Mac. Down here, I'm specifying that I want Git commands, I want their output to be in color. Now over here, there's a video about what those things mean over here. I believe those are, okay, they're aliases. That means instead of typing status, I can just put ST or, I think those are like single word Git commands.